I never imagined that signing that document would change my life so profoundly. They sold it to us as the Vertical Self-Management Center, a place where we could find redemption. I remember when I signed up, I wasn't sure what I was looking for: punishment, forgiveness, or perhaps a way to escape what I had done. Maybe all three. Zatin, my cellmate, made sure everyone knew his demand: pizza. He was adamant, almost threatening in his insistence. He warned that if he didn't get his pizza, he'd lose control. When the platform came down to our level, I saw the disappointment flash across his face. His pizza had arrived, but it wasn't whole. Someone on level 21 had already taken a bite out of it. Anger flashed in his eyes, and before I could stop him, Zatin grabbed someone else's meal. The others tried to reason with him. A French man from a few floors up leaned over the edge, reminding us all of the rules. "You must respect the food, respect the dishes that aren't yours," he said. It was an attempt to keep order, to ensure that the food reached everyone, even those at the lower levels. But I could tell Zatin wasn't listening. I offered him one of my croquettes instead. For a moment, I thought he might snap, but after tasting the food, he relaxed. The next day, I thought back to my favorite dish, the ham croquettes my ex used to make. They felt like a relic from another life, a life I'd never returned to because of the things I had done. The pit was alive, constantly shifting, and when communication from level 44 was cut off, I knew something was wrong. The Frenchman warned that people from the upper levels were coming down to defend the food, to make sure the rules were upheld. The next day, the chaos only grew. The floors above us had given up on following the rules. Crashes and screams echoed from level 21 as people refused to honor the law. I could feel the tension rising, and when the platform descended to us again, it brought more than just food. The Frenchman partner's body fell with it, lifeless, the result of his efforts to uphold a system that no longer worked. She had caught fire, her body consumed by flames. The man from level 21 was left unconscious, and the Frenchman's fury at the injustice boiled over. He believed in the law, in the possibility of solidarity. He spoke of finding the anointed ones, those who knew the master, the one who had survived a month at the lowest levels without food, giving his flesh to those in need. The story sounded like a myth. The last day of the month arrived. Zatin stared at one of my drawings. He admitted he wasn't as naive as he seemed. Mathematics had been his life once, but he gave it up. Then he turned to me. "How did you end up here, Peruan?" he asked. I had almost forgotten why I was here, the reason I'd spoken about in my interview, the time I needed to forgive myself. That night, there was a flicker of hope. We heard the floors around us, celebrating that food had made it to level 175. It was an unprecedented achievement, a sign that maybe the system could work. But the next day, we woke on level 180. The pit, in its merciless way, had decided our fate. Communication was cut off beyond level 169. The platform came down with nothing but empty dishes, and with each passing day, we lay there, waiting for something that would never come. We spent hours in silence, lost in our thoughts, or succumbing to our own madness. Zatin's antics grew stranger, more disturbing. He could barely speak. He told me he knew the end was near, that without proper food, he wouldn't survive much longer. I suggested we do whatever it takes to live. I saw the flashbacks in his eyes, his failures, his broken life. He had dropped out of school, lost every business venture he ever attempted, and even his family had given up on him. It all led him here, to the pit, sent by his own parents in the hope that discipline might save him. But discipline was not what this place offered. That night, I woke to find him standing at the edge of the abyss, staring down into the void. "I've made a lot of mistakes," he said. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a strange, resigned calm. "Don't come any closer," he warned. "I'll take the punishment alone." I wanted to stop him, to pull him back, but I knew I couldn't. This was his choice. Before he stepped away, he made one last request. "If you make it out of here, find my kids. Tell them their father always loved them." And with that, he disappeared into the darkness. I woke the next day on level 51, disoriented and with a new companion, a woman from one of the upper levels. I could tell she was fresh to the pit, her eyes still wide with confusion, not yet hardened by the weeks of hunger and brutality. I explained how things work down here, the food, the law, the punishments. When the platform finally descended, we noticed immediately that something was wrong. Food was missing. There had been trouble between level 46 and the one above it, but word soon came that an anointed one would be arriving to restore order. It didn't take long for chaos to erupt again. A barbarian had been identified on level 54, a man who had gorged himself on food last month while others starved. I wanted to go punish him, to take the justice that had been denied me last month. But the law was clear. Only those closest to the offender could take action. The others on the floors above cheered for the anointed ones who fought for them. They believed in these figures, warriors like Dagon Bogi, who upheld the law at all costs. When the platform came back, my companion tied up her hair with her one remaining hand and took a bite of her food. Then, without warning, she flipped her bed and broke the frame to arm herself. She wanted to go down and seek justice, to take action herself. Together, we descended to the next floor, where the men there tried to stop us. They warned us that leaving would break the chain of communication. Along the way, we picked up more companions, all of us driven by the same need for vengeance. The men there were ruthless, but we were quicker, more desperate. We took them down without hesitation, our anger fueling every blow. The barbarian, desperate to escape, leaped onto the platform in a last-ditch effort to flee. But we were right behind him, and I, through sheer will, managed to bring him down. For a moment, I hesitated. The platform began to descend, carrying him down further into the pit. My companion, still raging, wanted to finish the job. But I stopped her. As the adrenaline faded, something became clear to me. This woman wasn't as new to the pit as she had let on. Her movements, her understanding of the system, it all pointed to something deeper. Later, she confessed that she had been here for 6 months. She knew the law, had understood it from the beginning, even though parts of it felt deeply unfair. She told me her story through tears. Once, she and her previous companion had come across a starving young man. They gave him food from a dead man's plate, breaking the law to save his life. But when Dagon Bogi found out, they were punished. Her companion had her eyes gouged out, and she lost her arm. They left her companion tied to the platform, naked, to be feasted on by others. She believed there might be a way out during the interval, the brief time each month when the gas reconfigures the levels and puts everyone to sleep. Sevoflurane, she said, a gas used for anesthesia. But she hadn't yet figured out how to stay awake. Days later, Dagon Bogi continued his reign of terror, punishing those who broke the law. She insisted we needed to hurry and descend further, since both of us had intervened against the barbarian and were now guilty of breaking the law ourselves. As the platform descended, it carried a man tied to it, another victim of Dagon Bogi's justice. I didn't expect Dagon Bogi to arrive so soon. Blindfolded and accompanied by his anointed ones, his presence was unmistakable, a living symbol of the law, blind but all-seeing, his justice merciless. When he announced that we would be rewarded with more food for our pacifist intervention, I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. He explained that the pit needed strong men and women to defend the law, but suddenly, everything shifted. We were overpowered. The anointed ones moved swiftly, restraining us. My companion tried to justify what we had done. She spoke with conviction, explaining that we acted in the best interest of everyone's safety. But Dagon Bogi's response was cold and unyielding. The law isn't up for interpretation, he said, his voice devoid of empathy. It simply must be followed. Dagon Bogi moved closer to my companion. The woman with one arm will face the same punishment as Kakasi, he announced. My stomach churned. I knew what that meant. I had heard the stories. Kakasi had been mutilated, left to die in agony, her body devoured by others. We were tied at the edge of the hole, our arms stretched out toward the abyss. The platform descended, sweeping us away like dust. My companion was tied up naked on the table, left as an offering to be devoured by those around her. I could only watch, powerless. When I woke, I was on the 72nd floor, accompanied by an older man who had chosen a knife as his comfort item. We decided not to interact with the floors above or below, choosing instead to focus on survival. The pit had a way of breaking everyone eventually. I remembered the escape plan. I was determined to survive. Yet, when the platform arrived at our level, the old man wasted no time devouring everything he could. Food was the only thing that mattered to him, while I stood there, watching the chaos unfold with a strange detachment. I climbed up onto the table, urging him to do the same, hoping to avoid the inevitable descent into madness. I knew what I had to do. I had to unite the barbarians, gather allies, and rebel against the loyalists. It was the only way. As we descended, I spoke to the people we encountered, convincing some to join our cause. Many hesitated, still clinging to the fragile structure of the law. But others, those who had suffered enough, joined us. The platform became a battlefield. The more people who joined, the more chaotic it became. Our descent was fueled by desperation. The others celebrated, dancing and laughing for the first time in what felt like forever. I couldn't shake the weight of the memories of the boy, the child I had failed. I remembered the art exhibit, the sculptures that had made me famous. My boyfriend had brought his son to meet me. I had warned him not to touch anything, but I hadn't done enough to protect him. He had tripped, fallen into one of my sculptures, sharp, dangerous, and completely unprotected. The blades had cut through him like paper. The memory still stung, even now. The barbarians were preparing for battle. They didn't know about the mattresses that the loyalists had used to shield themselves, to protect their stronghold. As the battle began, blood spilled across the platform. The loyalists had the advantage, their defense impenetrable. Before I could react, the old man slid his knife toward me from under the bed. I grabbed it instinctively, fighting off the attacker with a surge of adrenaline. In the chaos, I found myself hiding once more, waiting for the massacre to end. When it was over, only the old man and I remained standing. The bodies of our fallen comrades littered the floor, and among them, lying on the edge of death, was Dagon Bogi. I stood over him, knife in hand. The man who had terrorized us all, who had upheld the law with ruthless efficiency, was now helpless. I had the power to end him, to take revenge for everything he had done. But something inside me shifted. I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I knelt beside him, tending to his wounds. Here I was, with the power to inflict the same kind of pain I had lived with all this time. But I didn't. I wouldn't let myself become the monster I feared. I wouldn't let my imagination twist into something grotesque, something that mirrored the pit itself. I chose mercy. When I told him I was leaving, he only nodded, saying he would stay. "This has been the best month of my life," he said. His words hung in the air, filled with an odd sense of finality. Despite everything, despite our fight for freedom, we both understood that we were trapped in a prison far deeper than the pit itself. As I prepared to leave, I remembered more of the conversation I had once had with my former companion. She had told me the only way out was to pretend to be dead, to let the system take me during the cleaning, and then improvise. It sounded absurd, but it was my only option. That night, I had a vision. I saw the children, fighting amongst themselves in the eerie park. It was a scene that never left my mind. Then, suddenly, one of them was illuminated by a single beam of light. Guards came, whispering something in his ear before calmly taking him away. It was as if the child had been chosen, but for what, I couldn't say. The pit had its own rules, its own way of selecting those who would live and those who would die. I woke up just as the gas began to fill the pit. My heart raced as I recalled the plan. Pretend to be dead. I had ingested a hallucinogenic patch I found in a painting I had clung to, something I had taken from the educated old woman. As the gas swirled around me, I lay still, letting the haze pull me under. They came for me, just as I had hoped. The cleaners, faceless and methodical, took me to the very bottom, level 333. At the end of the pit, I waited. They were distracted, and I seized the moment. I crawled under a bed, hiding in the shadows, watching as they prepared the pit for another hellish month. My body was weak, the effects of the gas pulling at my mind, but my goal was clear: escape. But then, in the haze, I saw him, a child, asleep on the bed in that final level. I couldn't leave him here, not in this place. Without thinking, I decided to save him. But as I reached for him, my head struck something hard, sending a wave of pain crashing through me. The impact unleashed a torrent of hallucinations, visions that clawed at my mind. I saw the people from my past, the ones from my visions, gathered around a table, their eyes hollow, their mouths twisted in hunger. They urged me, demanded that I kill the child, to offer him as a sacrifice so they could devour him. The horror of it paralyzed me, but I refused. I couldn't let them win, couldn't let the pit turn me into what I feared most. Then, just as suddenly as the visions had come, they vanished. I snapped out of the trance, the reality of the pit pressing down on me once more. I descended further, beyond the last levels, where I found a group of starving people, desperately scavenging for food among the scraps left on the platform. One of the women approached me, her face gaunt and weary. "Only children are allowed to go back up," she said, her voice laced with regret. I looked at the child, my heart heavy with sorrow. I didn't want to abandon him, but I knew she was right. My journey had come to an end. There was no salvation for me here. But for him, maybe, just maybe, there was hope. With tears in my eyes, I let the child go, watching as he ascended alone, carried away by the platform. I could only hope that he would save himself, that he could escape the fate that had claimed so many. And that's it for the story of the platform 2. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more movie breakdowns just like this one. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.